I want to tell you a really weird story. It begins when I'm in comprehensive school and the year is 1989. And there's a history teacher there called Brian Luxton. Wonderful historian in Barry, still alive. He's a history teacher in Barry Boys Comprehensive School for years. And he was one that, was seeing that I was into archaeology and he was encouraging me and all the rest of it. And he told me that there was a chap who had been an archaeologist historian in Barry in the 60s, 70s and whenever, right? This guy was a guy that I come to know as Morian. So his name was Morian Williams, Morian Hex Williams. And he died not so many years ago. However, he died in Penarth, but he lived in Barry all his life, most of it. And the one thing about this Morian is the weird stories I've heard about him. And what the weird stories are as follows. Brian told me that there was this guy Morian who was to be avoided. And it was odd that he told me this. But he was still around. And he basically told me that this guy Morian had sort of done archaeological work and he kept it in his head, kept it in his mind. But he was a bit of an odd guy and not to go anywhere near him, and he'd never published any of his work. Anyway, a few years later, I think it was about a year later, I was wandering out of the comprehensive school, think about 1990, and this guy come up to me. I think this was like this Morian guy, and he was talking to me. So it was like the only time I'd actually met this bloke. Years transpire again. I speak to another historian in Barry, archaeologist. And I'm not going to mention the guy's name because he might take offence to me using it, so I won't. Brian won't mind because I don't think what I've said, that Brian said, is detrimental to anything, really. But anyway, there was this other archaeologist historian. He said, Morian Williams, years ago, he said that he had been excavating at Merthyr Tydfil. No, can't even get the word. It's a Merthyr, isn't it? Merthyr Dyfan. Get the right Merthyr. Merthyr Dyfan in Barry. He'd been excavating with him in Merthyr Dyfan, Barry. And he went to Wenvo this one day and he had like a carry case and he had some kind of mental breakdown. And he said that what was in his carry case was like amazing stuff about Merthyr Dyfan. And I think he ended up in psychiatric place, call it a mental hospital. And anyway, again, down the track, same historian said to me, he said, Morian used to make up stories, i.e. he used to be involved with a group of excavators, but he used to make up stories like he had an archaeological qualification and so on, and he would invite them to events and when he'd been to Egypt and all these different types of things, and it was lots of little weird stories. And this Morian Williams, I had again said this was a bit of a weird, convoluted story. I was handed a book and it had Morian's name on it. It was a book about, it was like had a sticky label on the front with his address, and it was a book about the archaeological excavations of Sir Mortimer Willett at Maiden Castle. And I just thought, this is strange. This was given to me by somebody completely random. They said this book and his name on it, Maureen Williams, his address, Gladstone Road, Barry. And anyway, I still got the book. Anyway, I tried to trace this guy, Maureen Williams, throughout the archaeological records. I really couldn't find anything about him at all, nothing at all, except he may have been involved with some archaeological excavations at Barry Castle in the 1950s. And the weird thing is it seems that we don't have a trace on him at all to do with any archaeological work in and around the Barry area. So it's really, really strange about this Maureen Williams guy. Now, Maureen Hex Williams. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning this story is that I have come across other people who have said, you know, this Maureen Williams, you know, he did do archaeological work and he was active within archaeology. But it seems that the whole fraternity of people in Barry involving archaeology and history have basically dismissed this guy and raised him from the history books, right? Which is really, really upsetting. What archaeological work was Maureen Williams involved in? What did he actually discover? Who was this guy? And the reason why I'm putting this out there is I just want to hear if anyone's got anything to say about this Maureen Williams. There was a Maureen, in fact, slightly different spelling, in the valleys in the early 1900s. He wrote a number of books on the archaeology and history of the valleys. But this Maureen Williams, he wasn't called Williams. No, he wasn't a Williams. No, he was called Maureen. Sorry, I put the Williams in it. But the same name as the guy in Barry, Maureen Williams, but he was a Maureen in the valleys. And his work was completely dismissed. But I'm reading his stuff and it's really good because there's stuff in there that makes sense, but it's been dismissed. I'm putting this out there. If you know any figures in history and archaeology that you feel need a bit more credit, let's discuss this. If you've ever come across this Maureen Williams guy in the Barry area from the 50s, 60s, 70s, maybe 80s, let me know, because that'd be really, really good. This is the thing. If you're ever involved in history and archaeology, get your stuff published. I've published a lot of stuff over the years and it's out there, it's public record, but I've still got lots of stuff to publish. And for me, that's really important. But I'll tell you another story about me. I went to Kaya Went once and I took a group of people there and I discovered that the wall at the back of the car park looked like it was Roman.